commitment, less rhetoric and more action.
My Lords, I was brought up in the 1950s and I was taught by my parents that you could trust a policeman, that if you ever needed help you could go to a police officer and they would do what they could to help. But that's just not possible anymore, is it? I doubt many parents teach their children that particular trope. And I, of course, am not alone in my distrust. Trust in the police is extremely low and it is very concerning, and I'm glad the Commissioner, the new Commissioner, has actually picked up on this particular aspect. He's got a very difficult job to do, I don't doubt that, as more and more reports come in about very poor decisions by officers on policing protests, by arresting journalists, on being in WhatsApp groups that show racism, homophobia and sexism, or even state-sponsored crimes that officers have committed, for example, when undercover, especially the spy cops who infiltrated campaigns through abusive, misogynistic relationships with women campaigners. The inquiry has been drawn out for many years, partly because the Met has not cooperated in releasing quite vital information. They have preferred to protect their criminal actions. Now, the Commissioner has vowed to improve recruitment, conduct and discipline in the force, and of course all of those aspects are relevant, all of them. For example, police violence towards women, sexism and misogyny needs dealing with urgently. Officers need training and supervision, they need punishments for infringements, and the Met needs support for whistleblowers. The behaviour by Wayne Couzens over a period of many years, which was accepted and joked about by other officers, is a dire warning of widespread bigotry and very disturbing conduct being allowed. Talking to a senior officer this week, the officer asked me, what areas of policing were the police getting right? And I couldn't reply. I couldn't think of one. And that's entirely possible that the two units that I massively supported when I was a member of the Met Police Authority during its 12 years existence were the traffic and the wildlife crime units. Both of those were absolutely amazing, do a superb job that actually the public pretty much supported. I trust that they're still doing a superb job. The government has a role here, of course. They can't leave the police to do this on their own. Legislation has to be clear. One of the factors in, I think, the police losing public support during lockdown was the fact that the government poured on laws and guidance and advice which often conflicted, and therefore the police were quite often left in not knowing what the appropriate tool was to do their job. That really didn't help. It created a lot of conflict between police and public. And I'm going to argue that the Public Order Bill is a very good example of what the government should not be doing. It has been drafted very poorly. There are all sorts of weird gaps in it and some very confused terms. This will not help the police to police protests. It is designed to prevent protests, to stifle dissent, most currently about the climate crisis. But we all know that emissions are not slowing. Scientists warn of the possible permanent collapse of our food and water supply and of civilization itself. And our government is quelling the dissent not by acting and actually improving on the situation, things that could actually, in the long term, will save massive amount of public money. But they're dealing with a symptom, which is people going out on the streets and saying this isn't right. So the police are having to deal with problems caused by the government and become distracted by the real crime committed by the government itself.
I'm most grateful